one of the reasons why you were so successful in your career was because you were able to adopt some pretty unconventional means in the sale itself once you get that opportunity into pipeline. Can you talk about maybe some preconceived notions that people have about what you should do in your sales process and what you think you should do differently and what's been successful for some of your clients?
I'll give you one of the easiest ones. I always look at discovery calls as a first date. So imagine I showed up to a first date and I was like, tell me your FICO score, tell me about your relationship with your parents, tell me what's in your bank account. People would be like, that's really aggressive for a first date. I'm out of here, as you should. But when we think about that on our discovery calls, and that's our only initiative, we're showing up to solve our needs, not to solve our buyers. So what we have to think about instead is just change your lens a little bit, right? Show up to that call and say, I am here to solve, not to sell. So if I'm going to solve your challenges, I don't need to know about your budget. I don't need to know about authority, et cetera. The only thing I really need to know is about your need. Why do you have a need? Why is it an issue? Why now? Who else is involved? What's it impacting? On and on and on. I can spend 28 minutes talking to you about that specifically and then say, you know what? We're perfect for you. There's something I can show you. I'm going to set up a time for us to demo, or to say, you've got a lot of challenges. We're not quite the right fit for you. Let me make a recommendation. That atypical thing, what some might see as a waste of time that I did in the early days, gave me an amazing opportunity to understand so much about our buyer and to be of value no matter what. I think the other thing is the way that I invested time in people when we maybe lost deals. So one easy thing that we do is every single time we lose a deal that we've been working on, competitive, lots of proposals, lots of calls, if we lose that deal, we'll send a handwritten thank you note to everybody that's been involved in that deal. It's a smart and just easy way to say, we really appreciate your time. We wish things had gone differently. If we can ever be a resource, please let us know. We wish you the best of luck no matter what. What's incredible and the mic drop moment that I love about that so much is that the person that won the deal probably isn't sending anything, let alone a handwritten thank you note. And it's such a great way for us to say, we're super classy, call us if things don't work out.
Those are super unconventional. I've never heard of the idea of sending a thank you note to someone who you invested a ton of time to. When you have a team that's not as performative tactically, what are some of the ways that you can help them turn the corner and start to drive up performance across each individual on the team?
I think this is a boat that almost every company we talk to is in right now, and they're struggling with what to fix first, right? So I think one of the things is when you're missing your number that dramatically, we need to start at the foundational level and see what's going on there to begin with. What do our prospecting efforts look like? What do our emails look like? What are the conversions there? When we have discovery calls, what are those conversions? Inbound, outbound, how does that look different? And I think the thing with that is, like, you need to investigate and inspect the things that are happening 100 times a day times your entire sales team. This isn't about we want to bring in a social selling person. This isn't about we need, prime negotiation tactics. You might need that, and that might exactly be the issue, but usually it's super, super key foundational stuff. So it means that we maybe don't have a KPI around self-sourcing, right? We tell our reps to go prospect. We don't give them a number or metric to hit that we can hold them accountable to. It means that perhaps we're sending hundreds of emails, but they're all so bad that they do nothing but damage our brand. So then maybe when that book even changes to a next rep who tries again, that buyer says, I hate hearing from these people. I'm not going to even open it. And then I think on discovery calls, what do those convert like? I was recently on a call with an enablement team, very, very, very large multinational financial organization, who looked at me quizzically when I said, what is your conversion rate like on your discovery calls? And they said, well, we don't know, but we'll look it up. And they're like, tell us what's good and what's not good. And I was like, well, 60 to 70% of call 1 to call 2 should move forward, right? If you're at like 50%, we have a problem. If you're at 30 or 20%, your house is on fire. But they didn't even know that. They didn't know that that was something they should be looking at. And probably a lot of leaders don't either. Look at the basic foundations first of what is and isn't working before you try to solve for other things. And then that's how you can start to see what should we be measuring against? What do we need to fix? What do we need to address right now? What parts are just leaky boats and what parts are our house are on fire?
The greatest leaders who I've ever seen, who I've ever worked with, are complete data nerds. They understand their business in and out. It brings me to another question. You just wrote a pretty controversial post about the most wonderful time of the year, which is fiscal year end.
Fiscal year end.
What are some of the challenges or biggest mistakes that you see or you've seen with other companies or you have even lived experience with around the fiscal year end, and how do we overcome them?
I have sat in on so many forecast calls in my life, both for my own teams, my peers, and then our clients. And I think one thing that shocks me sometimes is the most obvious questions we need to be asking about deals, we just aren't. And we could be talking again to some of the most tenured people in sales, but sometimes we also get emotionally tied to these deals that we don't think enough of what we should really be asking. So I think a couple of things. One, sometimes we work these enterprise deals or even tough mid-market commercial deals that take a long time to close. And we think, oh, it's March, I've got plenty of time. We need to think systematically about what we're doing, one, to lead up to the end, but two, at the end. The thing that we do that's most critically damaging to us is that we think about the short term versus the long-term game. Long-term game always. And yes, time kills deals, I get that. But what we want to think about is where are we with the deal? And if the only thing that we're going to do is make the mistake of discount, and pushing, what is that going to mean not only for the character and the integrity that our buyer sees in us? What is it going to mean for lost revenue? What is it going to mean for next year's pipeline? Is it really worth it? So some of the pitfalls I see is that we don't think about these deals strategically early enough. Let me give you a couple of examples. We had a deal specifically that we were helping a client work through that was going to close by the end of the year, theoretically. And the only thing that stood in that person's way was a December 8th board meeting. So that board meeting had to happen. They were going to make a, case for the spend, et cetera. As soon as that happened, we were good to go. But a couple of things came up. So number one, the client didn't know what was happening in that board meeting. Was it an ask for the spend? Was it telling somebody? Was it running a plan and then getting permission? We didn't know what was actually happening. We just trusted the buyer and we said, okay, they're having a meeting, that's it. And then we're going to be able to move forward. The next thing is we didn't ask about any of the pitfalls that might come up in that board meeting. So when we said, well, have they ever presented a case like this? Do they know what the pitfalls are? Do they know what the common objections are that are going to come up? The rep was feverishly writing, as was all of his superiors on the call. These are really basic things, but not only that, this is how we show our buyers that we know them by one, asking those questions and enabling them to be able to answer them correctly in the meeting. Because odds are those questions will come up in the meeting. Buyer will not know how to respond. We'll come back and say, we didn't get them answered. We're going to get to answer them next board meeting, next year, and now we've lost our deal. Other small things, right? We didn't know if this deal was happening on our paper or theirs. We hadn't already met with procurement. We hadn't gotten a chance to start going through that paperwork. We didn't know if InfoSec was something that we had to go through. So many things, especially Chris as an SC, you're probably like, oh my gosh, InfoSec, like we talk about this all day long. But we don't talk about these things because sometimes we have too much trust in our buyers. That may sound rude, but what we have to think about is they want whatever it is that we're selling. So we have to work in partnership. Again, with changing the lens, don't think it's us versus them trying to get something done. Think it's you guys working together and eventually trying to convince other teams, higher ups, executive committees to say yes. And when you start to change that lens, you feel much more comfortable asking questions that you might not have been so comfortable asking before.
That was so well said. One of the things that's most important that you just talked about is, hey, how do we apply show me, you know me at the organizational level, but then most importantly at the champion level? You're probably not going to be the one who has that final conversation that moves the needle over to close one deal. It's probably going to be your champion or some sort of representative on the buyer side. How do we make sure that we're co-creating with them in a way where their fingerprints are on it, but we're coaching them through that process of making sure that we can get this deal done and this project over the line and actually set them up for success as well?
If the deal actually has legs, and if you've taken the time to at least build trust in a relationship, those questions are completely warranted. They're not salesy, they're not aggressive. They're questions that you legitimately have to ask. And how often have we talked to our sellers and say, is this the ultimate decision maker? Do they have buying authority? Do they have signature authority? And the rep says, I'm not sure. And we're like, oh my gosh, and it's already at 90% commit in our CRM and we blow a gasket. These are critical, basic things. And yes, you're right. It was a good controversial LinkedIn post. Lots more in there to dive into.
I'm looking forward to it. I love the unconventional and controversial that you're putting out right now. Sam, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today and learning more about how Sam sells. What is the biggest takeaway from this conversation? If you want to leave people with something, one thing that they could take away from this conversation, what would it be?
Get back to your basics. Really, that's it. Get back to your basics as leaders. Figure out those high quality touches, investment in the customer, showing them that you care about them, showing them you've made an effort every time you reach out. Get back to those basics, because I do think in the age of AI, as we scale everything, we veil everything, we make people think that we care about them through automated research. I think the people that are going to win are going to be the people that use that great AI to scale their own learning and then connect that with the authenticity of who they are to send great messaging.
I love it. Buying is human. Thank you, Sam. Sales.
Thank you so much.
We could probably talk for hours about this.